generally, when people speak about compatibility, it can be so wide. It can be astrology. It can be, do we like the same things? Do we have the same hobbies? But when you go deeper into psychology, what is it actually when it comes to compatibility? So you said that there's what I need, what I want, but that's still, is that really compatibility? Because that's just somebody meeting my requirements.
Right. But that's, and I think we need to do this more, even though people are going to hate you for this. Let's say instead of a romantic relationship with love, right?
Okay.
Let's say it was a business decision. Let's say you had a company and you were looking to hire an accountant. Now you can fall in love with a psychologist, but if your company needs an accountant, then that's just going to end up in a bunch of fights. So and this is the compatibility thing. Let's say you're someone who likes a lot of space in relationships. You want to go on trips with your girls alone. You want to keep kind of your autonomy a little bit. You don't want to get sucked into like a relationship. But now you're with someone who really wants to do everything together all the time, right? That's going to end up being a huge tug of war with a lot of broken hearts and feelings, right? So I think it's really important. And I know this sounds really technical, but before you actually get into a relationship and have feelings for someone, I think it's important going in with a list of what do I want in a relationship, in a partner? Because the feeling, I think, comes from familiarity, from being around a person more than once, from having the attraction, right? Once that happens, people start to fall in love. And then looking at compatibility becomes really complicated because now you're already attached.
You're trying to fit it in.
Exactly. And that's what most people do is I love you so much. Now I have to fit you into my life, whether or not that's actually the life that you envision for yourself.
Yeah.
And so for a while when I was single and I would go on dates, not in a direct way where I was sitting there with a piece of paper, like, so how do you feel about this? And what about this? And what are your,
I've actually done that before.
Oh, okay. Yeah, which I think is the right way to do it, right?
Yeah.
Because if you have the compatibility part, then you can see if there's the love part.
You just don't want to waste time.
Yes, exactly. And I think that like my generation and before, I think that because society was so structured in a way where someone wanting autonomy or not wanting autonomy or all of that stuff, it was less a choice and more society dictates how you are to behave in a formalized relationship, right? And now where we have so much more freedom, I think this is an important thing to ask. I mean, do you want to live by the beach? Do you want to live in the forest? Do you want to live somewhere where it's hot? Do you want to live somewhere where it's like cool? Like there's so many factors that can then cause problems later on, and relationships are already wired to have problems anyway, so you might as well minimize the chance for problems as much as possible.
Yeah, but then people can feel quite overwhelmed when someone comes like ready to say, I'm not saying I want to get married to you tomorrow, but I just need to know so I don't waste my time. People say, oh, but why don't we just go with the flow? Now I feel so overwhelmed by this person asking me those questions. Now that opportunity of that relationship is completely cut because they feel, okay, that was too much.
But wouldn't that also be a sign for you that that person might not really be that serious about finding a relationship?
Maybe, but also the way that that person handles certain situations. Maybe they're a little anxious in society, or they don't feel very open towards people. They're open to having a relationship with someone for the long term, but when someone comes headstrong, they might feel, oh, okay, this is maybe I
I mean, and I don't know. So like I was saying, when I was doing it, it was more that I had a way of weaving my questions into the getting to know someone conversation, right? So like, like things like, for example, let's say I really want kids, right? And I want to find someone who also really wants to have kids. I'm not going to say, do you want kids? I'm kind of going to watch, the subtlety of how maybe that person, maybe,
siblings.
Well, or maybe even just say, let's go to a place where there are kids.
Do you want to go to a nursery with me?
No, like a restaurant that also allows children, right? And to kind of see how they react to the children. If they're like, okay, then you're gonna go, oh, I'm sorry, maybe this was the wrong place. Do you not like children? And then they'll be like, no, I really like children. It's just, they're very loud and, whatever. Like, so you can kind of call it out without making it a list.
That's a really smart way. Obviously, it's not a list, but 0 or 100 kind of individuals like me, I don't know how to There's no patience when it comes to even.
But I also think that that's really cute because it says a lot about who you are, right? So if someone is taken aback and has a problem with you saying, I don't want to waste time, here's my list.
I mean, I didn't whip it out of my bag.
Okay, here we go. Question 1. But I do think that, I think that also speaks to you, right? And I think that a lot of people that do the whole, let's just see where this goes, I don't know if they are as serious about making a relationship work, really finding someone to have a relationship with, or maybe just wanting to have a fun time and see if, which that's the old school way, I think. This is like the romantic comedy kind of setting of here's a guy who's sure he doesn't want to have a girlfriend and he's such a player, but then he meets the one and all of a sudden his whole personality changes and he now becomes a family man, right? So I think that we've been kind of tricked into that magical thinking of relationships. And I think
that goes into, I can change him if he's in love with me.
Oh goodness, let's not even start with that one. That's the worst one. But I do think that, I think there's a lot of people out there that really want to have a relationship and want to work on a relationship, but they also might be afraid to go out there and meet people. And, so it's, I think if you come out with the direct question of, do you want to have a relationship? And they say, let's just see how it goes.
You've got your answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you have a relationship and then you've got the concept of love, these two concepts, you can have love without the relationship and you can have relationship without the love. Right. So moving away from romantic relationship, let's go into family, for example. Okay. Naturally, everyone's like, of course, you love each other, your parents, but then is it a choice? Is it I have to love because that is my child, that is my parent? So how is love defined in this kind of scenario?
So I think ideally, love in that kind of a scenario comes with the empathy, right? So if my baby is crying as a mom, usually I know, does that baby need a diaper change? Or does that baby need food? Or does that baby need to sleep? Or does that baby need to cuddle? Like, what does that baby need, right? So that's the empathy part. I think that most people do connect with, aside the obvious narcissistic people, they do connect with the child. They know what women more know what the child wants. I think that most parents that want children also love their children. I think parents who don't want children but do it because it's expected of them from a social perspective, if they come from a society where it is expected of them, I think that becomes potentially a point of contention where loving your child, if you don't really feel it, you do it, but then that causes
resentment. Problems. There's some resentment. So do you think raising the child when you never wanted children but you had it because it's part of an expected society, you could say that there isn't really love? I mean, that's kind of hard to say, but
it's hard. I mean, I think that obviously it's on a scale, right? You've got someone who really doesn't want to have children, really doesn't like children, feels they have to do it, and you
can feel it from that parent.
Yes, and they might even say, "I hate my children," right? Which I think all parents have said at some point. So let's not judge that, right? But I think there are just a lot of people that felt they had to do it, and they really didn't want to do it because they saw a different trajectory for their lives, and now that has been changed, and now they're stuck with the child, and there's like a love-hate thing that happens between them.
But wouldn't you say that changes once they have the child? Like they have this small thing and then I don't know, I expect that the person who never wanted children that has the child all of a sudden thinks, oh my God, I love this child. Or does that not always happen?
I don't think it always happens. And I think it happens a lot less than most people think it does, because I think that most moms have a really hard time coming out and saying, because let's say I said to you, I'm pregnant. What would you say? You're like, oh my God, I'm so excited for you. That's so cool. It's so amazing. When are you due? Do you know, is it a boy or a girl? All of these questions, right? And so if I'm at odds with the fact that I'm pregnant or that I have a child, I'm going to feel like I have to play along when in fact I feel very differently inside. And so I get a lot of moms that come into me as a therapist and they're like, I shouldn't be feeling this, but I'm feeling this. And I'm like, no, it's okay. You're allowed to feel this. Not everybody feels love towards their child. And then we can take it back to your initial question of, it can become a choice. It can be like, okay, now I have this child. I have to mourn the future that I envisioned for myself. And then I can say, and I still want to make this, a happy child.
Right.
and then it can be more of a cerebral. And I don't know, maybe at some point, I find this a lot with dads. When there's a baby, they're like, I don't know what to do with this. You take it. But then when the baby's like 2, all of a sudden it's like, oh, we can do things together now.
They're
and I
fun.
can take, yeah. And so all of a sudden I find like that's kind of when more men feel connected to children, is when they're like starting to become little people.
But then it goes back to how you define love. Is
Yes.
it towards the individual, or is it because I feel a certain way?
Right.
So
I think most people that feel love for their child, it's like a real like connection, right? And I think the ones that don't necessarily feel the love can still be good parents. And, you know, maybe in some cases even be better parents, because if they care, they'll grab a book, they'll read up on how to raise a child healthily, and they might take a more rational approach to raising a child, which might be good too.
So when children grow up in an environment and they have both parents, say they have both parents, and they see that their kind of relationship and dynamic, the child grows up expecting this is how I should have my marriage.
Right.
But then maybe or maybe not, later on, later down the line, they notice that maybe that wasn't the best relationship, or maybe they never get that realization and they just continue having this kind of relationship.
Right.
At what point does a child grow up and start to really analyze their parents' relationship for themselves?
I think it happens when they try to have relationships and those relationships just always don't work out. And now they're going, well, then it's not the other person, then it's me.
But that doesn't always happen.
No, that doesn't always happen. And sometimes people meet someone and the relationship works out and then they never have to question their parents, right? And I guess, so to answer your question from a psychological perspective, the way that I do it mostly when I like take a more relational approach in psychology is I would ask you, what is your relationship with your dad? What is your relationship with your mom? And what is their relationship with each other? Or caregiver, right? Whatever. Because from that, I can tell how you navigate relationships. Because it's a relationship that you see, that you grow up with as a child, is kind of like a language, right? Like when you speak whatever English growing up, and you're always around people that speak English, you never question English, right? It's only when you move or go to a different country where you're trying to communicate in English, which I mean these days is okay, but let's go back a few years, and you can't communicate to the other person and get what you need, then you go, oh, maybe I need to learn the language of the people that are here.
It feels bigger than you because you are the one, and then there's all these people. So you're forced to self-reflect.
Exactly. And so I think that, you know, I look at people that are born in a society and let's say born and marry someone who comes from the same kind of background, with the same set of rules, with the same kind of like what they grew up seeing as being love, respect. A lot of people use respect in love. For them, that's normal. But now what I always find very interesting in Dubai is you get so many mixed relationships, and they come with so many different concepts of what a relationship means and so many expectations that they are not aware of, because it's like the language. They never questioned, why do I say things the way that I do in English, right? So I've never questioned why relationships are the way that they are. And then you put them together with someone from a very different relational background. And that's, I think, where the problems usually start in relationships.
Yeah, so different cultures, different values, different ideas of how a relationship should be, right? So you said that people in relationships from mixed backgrounds can have quite a bunch of problems, right?
I think if they're not communicating enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe, let's say that the statistical probability is higher.
Right. I mean, I'm going to say yes. But, you know, I may be skewed because most of the people that come through my door obviously are having problems. And but I don't think I've ever really seen a relationship between very different cultures that was easy.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing you. So say you are a child growing up in that environment and you see the difficulty. You've got one parent from one side of the world, you've got one parent from the other side of the world, and you are seeing these differences, and you are a result of a mixed cultured household. So when it's your turn to go out into the world and you're thinking, right, who fits my values?
Right. Well, I
Yeah.
think this goes back to the awareness of what you need, what you want, and what you like to give, but more broadly now, right? Because it's kind of like if you navigate the world the way that you learned from your parents and you never really sat down and defined what that means for you, then you're going to have problems with a person where you can't be clear about who you are and why you are the way that you are and why you expect the things that you expect and which of those expectations are negotiable and which ones are so deeply wired that if they don't get met, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah. So when children grow up in that kind of environment where the parents don't get on well, and usually in a straight straight person, the daughter refers to the father as the figure that they should be with, and then the female child looks at the
Mother.
The male child looks at the mother,
right,
and say that their parent was not the ideal person.
Right.
Maybe they were not self-aware, or they didn't develop on themselves, and there's a lot of issues that they carry. But then that person goes out into the world and looks for somebody like that subconsciously.
Right. I mean, yeah. So this is the question that I get a lot of people that have gone into different relationships. None of them really work out the way that they would like them
so
to.
how would you know who is right for you?
Well, I think it's more about you knowing yourself first, right? So the way that I see people that, okay, we all know what we want, like what is the right thing to have in a relationship. We want a partner who's stable. We want a partner who's secure, a partner who we have things in common with, and we know all of these things, right? But then for some reason, some people keep falling for people that are not that. And so I think that goes down to familiarity, right? So when we grow up in a household where, let's say, our parents are always fighting, and we go, I don't want to be that in a relationship, right? And no, let's use a different example. Let's use the example of a daughter of an alcoholic father, right? And she swears to herself, I'm never going to be with an alcoholic. I see how terrible that is for relationships, how detrimental that is. So I want to be with someone who isn't an alcoholic. So then she goes out on dates, and she goes out on a date with a guy who doesn't drink alcohol. And she's like, check, this is the one, right? And so then they get together, and they're together for a while. And, when after a few months, the people start to show all sides of themselves, not just the ones they think are desirable. Turns out, now that she's in love with this guy, turns out he's actually Alcoholics Anonymous, right? So he was an alcoholic, and now he's not drinking.
Maybe he's got a different addiction.
Or maybe he's got a different addiction. But it's kind of like we subconsciously look for what we know and what is familiar, and not what we think we want in a relationship. So it's kind of like if you said to yourself, okay, ready? I want a relationship now, right? I want a partner who is caring, loving, kind, supportive, is always available to me, right? Because let's say I have like an anxious attachment style. And then my subconscious hears, let's get a relationship. And my subconscious goes, okay, what do we know? What feels familiar? And so then we are drawn to what is familiar. So we invariably get drawn to the people that are never around, that don't, support us and everything, but it feels so familiar that we give it a lot more weight than what would be a good relationship. And I find that a lot of people say, I met this guy and he ticks all the boxes, but I'm not attracted. I'm much more attracted to the bad guy. I'm like, yes, this is kind of a hard one, because you almost have to, again, to your question, choose to be with someone that is healthy when your subconscious automatically looks for someone who's not.
So how would you translate that attraction? Because that's something kind of in a way wired in you. That's what you find attractive, but that's what you know. But you know that one's good for you.
Yes.
So you can choose to be with the person that's good for you. But if you don't translate that attraction and move it towards that person in a different way, it won't work.
But this is, I think, where also a lot of people get wrong, that sometimes attraction comes through the connection. Sometimes attraction is not, and I know that some would probably disagree with me, but sometimes the attraction is not the butterflies and the anxiety and all of that stuff. Sometimes the attraction is that feeling of being safe, that feeling of being seen, that feeling of being loved who I am and loving my partner for who he is, right? So it doesn't have to be, and I think this is where maybe we kind of went wrong as like women of a certain generation, obviously culturally dependent, but where we started acting like men, and where we started going with what we're attracted to and not necessarily waiting to see if this person is actually someone that I want to build a relationship and maybe a family with. But I mean, I've experienced it on my own body, right? Where, you know, it started out as a friendship. And then at one point there was kind of that moment where I'm like, oh, hold on there for a second. What's that feeling?
Something.
Yeah. And so I think it's more about having the patience to really get to know someone, and then kind of, I think there's just two different types of attraction. There's the attraction that comes when you feel safe and seen, and there's the attraction that's there when someone is mysterious, and because you know nothing about them, you can project all of your hopes and dreams into that person, and then he's Mr. Right, and then, you know, so yeah, I think it's more about having the awareness, and I think it's definitely also about having the awareness of what your subconscious is looking for, because it's familiar.
Yeah, so like you said, it's a self-awareness. It has to be a choice. It's never going to somebody who says, why do I always go for the same guy? That's bad for me. Or why do I always attract that person? I read somewhere that you have to look at yourself, reflect your inner self, and adjust how you want to be. And then the person that suits that will come to you.
Right. I think it's a little bit like, let's take finances, right? So most people that didn't have a father with a financial background, right, kind of, most parents don't necessarily sit their kids down and explain to them how finances work. But let's say you had parents who were kind of, you know, live paycheck by paycheck, never really saved money, you know, were kind of uncareful with money. And now you wonder why your bank account is never full, right? So unless you sit with a financial advisor and go, hey, how do I do this? Teach me, right? I need to understand what I'm doing wrong. I need to understand how to do it right. And then I can finally become wealthy or whatever I want to be, right? So it's the same thing with relationships, and coming to someone like me is kind of going, why do I keep making this mistake? What is it in me that keeps choosing the wrong people? How do we clean that up in me? And I think that like education-based psychology is really great. I think that going out and reading more research, or at least kind of like research-ish based things, to understand what our brain chemistry is, maybe the psychology of it, you know, different attraction, or not like different attachment styles, all of these things, to kind of get a better idea of who am I? How do I navigate? What do I want? What do I not want? How do I stop wanting what I don't want, right? And I mean, take again in terms of health, right? Let's say you grew up with a family who always went to McDonald's and Pizza Hut and never really ate healthily, and now you want to be healthy and you decide to go to the gym and eat healthy. It has to be a choice to change something that for you seems so normal, eating Burger King and sitting on the couch, right? And it has to be a choice, a decision. I am going to change this. How do I change this? I go out, I get a personal trainer. They teach me things. I read books on nutrition or watch things on nutrition. I learn how to cook. You know, so it's if you come from a background that's complicated, it's having the awareness that it's on me to change the way that I navigate the world. And then to make that choice for a better life, even though it might still feel really hard to say no to, you know, McDonald's French fries.
It's a discipline, right? It's something that you need. When a child is being raised by a parent, their parent is structuring the way that they behave and they think, and they're restructuring their brain, right? So you're kind of redoing it in a way where I need to unlearn something and relearn something else.
Yeah, and I think this is what most people get wrong with, just because you mentioned the unlearning and learning. I think most people are like, I have to learn to be better in a relationship. And I'm like, the most important step, like you said, is actually to unlearn the things that seemed normal to you, to then be able to learn the more adaptive things that will make you happier.
So when I'm looking for a partner and I have the wiring of my subconscious in terms of like what I believe is good for me, how do I actually know how to look for someone that is really good for me?
Okay, so you know what you want in a partner, right? You want someone who's calm and kind and caring and generous and all the things, whatever it is that you want, right? So this is more the adult brain of what you've learned a healthy relationship should be, right? But like I said before, the subconscious, when you say, I want a relationship, your brain goes, I want all these good things. Your subconscious goes, I kind of want what I think a relationship is, what I saw, before. So there's an exercise if you want to figure out why you keep going for the people that you go for, right? It's about figuring out what it is that you subconsciously look for, right? And so I give my patients this exercise that they, take their time doing. It doesn't have to be like, as long as they want it to be for as much time as many days. But I need them to write down, the topic is my childhood home.
Okay.
And then they write down all the negative experiences, situations, pain that they had, things that and I have to say this as a caveat, right? Every childhood has good and bad. But for this exercise, I just want everyone to focus on the bad things in their childhood, right? And then
even if you feel like you've healed from it?
Yeah, even if you feel like you've healed from it. But just like, what were the negative things in your family? Like in my family, for example, it would be my father would travel a lot, right? And that caused me pain.
Right.
So it's just whatever it is that caused you pain in your childhood. And that's the exercise.
Right.
And I'm not going to tell you the resolution until next time.
Oh, okay.